Okay,
There we go.
yeah, yeah. Let's start with conceptually what we're talking about. Um, um, many years ago, back when I was 3 years old and Master Smith was 40,
35.
something like that. He and I were having a conversation. I believe it was at the Battle of Atlanta, if I remember correctly. And he said something that made awful lot of sense to me, just almost as an afterthought. But he said, "Well, I made the decision to take whatever my worst month usually is, and figure out how to make that the best month of the year. And so what we're doing, and this was November, December, is we're doing, I don't think he used the word renewal blitz, but an end of year special with a price increase at the beginning of the year. And we're renewing everybody in December rather than waiting until after the end of the year and doing huge cash numbers." And he was at the time with multiple schools, as well as, renting the limo and taking them all out. And I did that for years, where we all went out to a big Christmas banquet, and I would show up with stacks of $100 bills, and we would pass $20 bills down to that guy, and $100 bills, and bring the new Rolex, and here's the Rolex, and all of that stuff. That would be our Christmas bonus banquet. But
now everybody wants to work for you.
yeah, it didn't hurt. But the idea was, to begin with, is have what normally your worst month is, meaning, most martial arts schools are just whining and bitching and moaning about Christmas, right? July and December, which, we've made July one of the best enrollment months of the year, not a slow month. And Mile High Karate has best cash month of the year. God, what's it been now, Master Smith? 37 years, I guess. In the last 37 years, probably the best cash month of the year was December for 34 or 35 of those years. And then the second best cash month of the year was November. And the last 2 months of the year would often do more cash than the previous 4 or 5 months, right? So and then over the years, I started modifying that a little bit, only in this way, is I knew generally January, February, March, April were going to be busy enrollment period of times, right? I also knew that August, September, October were going to be a busy enrollment period. Obviously now we've made it July is busy as well. But I knew that we were going to be really busy with marketing and really busy with enrollments early in the spring. And before summer hit and people got distracted, I wanted to get them all renewed. I also had a second problem with which, isn't unusual, and we'll whine and bitch about it to you guys all the time. But I always had a hard time with 6 staff of getting my staff to really focus on marketing and enrollments and closing a bunch of renewals at like the same damn time, right? Is they would get really busy and they would do 50 enrollments this month, but their renewal numbers were low, or they'd really blitz it through on renewals, but they take their eye off the marketing. So I just decided at one point that we had to go with that, and I could orchestrate centrally. We're going to do November, December, a big renewal blitz, and we're going to do, depending on when school got out, we're going to do a 6-week renewal blitz in the spring to clean up all of that. And it turned into, for me, cleaning up all the renewals that should have already been done and renewing everybody who should be renewed, and a big blitz of going through everybody at the same time. And again, then you get the concept that we're coming up on is on October 1st, we're coming up on Christmas soon, and we're coming up on that November, December period. Yeah, both pieces of the order. Anyway, having lunch delivered, but the second thing on November, December. Here. But the other thing on November, December is it gives you a really nice structure, because we have the beginning of November, then we have Thanksgiving, And then we have right after Thanksgiving, we have until the week of Christmas, and then you have usually 8 or 10 days until the 1st, right? So what we can do is one, and this is where Master Smith and I perhaps go in different directions a little bit, but I always use this as also one of the staff incentives was to have essentially 2 weeks off over the holidays. May not be exactly 2 weeks, but I'd give them from whatever looked normal on the calendar the day or two before Christmas until the day or two after New Year's, right? And now, that doesn't mean you can't do a lot of business during that week. It was just a natural time that I could give people time off. And, you know, what I hate is I hire you and I tell you get 2 or 3 weeks of vacation a year. And then you tell me you want to take off September 1st to September 15th, right in the middle of prime time, back to school, everything else. So like this year, Christmas falls on Thursday or on Friday, the 25th. So I could let them close on the 23rd, and then I could have them open on the 4th, which is the first Monday after January. And then the second thing, so that would be one of the incentives, right? So I would always have a time off and a cash bonus incentive for the staff on numbers that they did by Thanksgiving. And then I would have a cash bonus and a time off incentive for numbers that they did through, what would it be? In this case, through December 19th. Or we might even make the cutoff December 12th this year. And then what would happen is the reason I did 2 segments over was basically a 6-week period of time is if they didn't start off strong, they could have a really good December and really mediocre results overall. Because what they do if you don't get momentum started is they end up in renewing all of the A students and A+ students in December, and then all the B students and C students, they never get around to getting them fixed and getting them prepped and getting them renewed, and you have a problem. Does that make any sense so far? So they have to really start off really strong and pull off all the cream, renew all the A+ students, renew the A students, and then that gives them also that month to really prep and get the B's to, the B's to A's, the C's to B's, and then the B's to A's, right? So the way you start with this, and by the way, in the member site, there's an unlimited amount. I mean, there's a huge amount of content. If you search Renewal Blitz and one thing or another, there's photos of schools and how they're decorated. There's all the different things. There's different meetings we've done on this and so forth. But the starting point is right now is you really focus on goal setting and long-term objectives, and you go through your entire student body, you ABC them, and you really put the pressure on the staff. Anybody who's weak and fading, we've got to get them up to an A, and anybody who's lukewarm, we've got to get them up to an A, because we know that we have a month, 2 months at the outside that we need to get them renewed, right? So what we do in October is really pump up the volume. Master Smith mentioned special events and all that stuff, big Halloween parties and all that. Again, this is, COVID, so we've got to deal with and adapt to some of that stuff. But you really make this month focused on, we're teaching goal setting. One of the things I liked about the psychology of winning is one of the chapters is positive self-direction. So we could teach that chapter in October, and we could really talk about goal setting, and we could really focus on black belt goals and all of that kind of stuff. So you're getting the idea so far. This month is a month that you really pump up the volume. You make sure that everybody's really engaged. And of course, you go ahead and do all the renewals you would do anyway. You don't push them off because you're trying to get a big end of year. You go ahead and get all the renewals you would do anyway. But you're really prepping to make sure that everybody rises to the occasion and are ready by the time you get there. So far, so good. Then we hit November 1st. And what we do at that point is we go full bore crazy. And I mean that just like it sounds. If you look at all of those pictures, you see extremely gaudy decorations. I mean, stuff hanging from the ceiling that you have to duck to get into the school. I mean, you can't miss it, right? But we go full bore crazy with one massive communication to the student. And I don't mean you send them a couple emails, big priority mail packages, 2 postcards a week, another big package, and you really overwhelm them with the idea of what's going on. Now, what we have already in the can, and you may not have this already, but I recommend you start, is every time that one of the black belts test. So if they test for conditional black belt, they test for first degree, they test for second degree, they test for third degree, they have to write some essays. And one of the essays is what martial arts has done for me. Well, so now we have, I don't know how long we've been doing it, but let's say 18 years or 19 years worth of these things, twice a year. So we have a stack that's just massive. And that's freely admitting some of them aren't digitized, and some of them we've lost over the years, and some of them are on a hard drive that fried or whatever, right? But we got enough of that stuff to just overwhelm them. So now what happens is we have, during this period of time, a black belt test and a black belt graduation typically. Sometimes that's in October leading up, sometimes that's in November. My preference was always to have the black belt test in October, have a big graduation thing happening in November to prep them ahead of time. But so now what we can do is the black belt graduation is coming up. Everybody who's graduating can have their pictures on the mirrors, pictures on the wall. Congratulations. We can have black belts decorating that everywhere. But then I can take all those essays that they just did, and everyone who walks in the school, I hand them one. I put them in a big packet that I put in a priority mail envelope and mailed to everybody. But what happens is every time they walk into the school, the parents are getting something that's proof, right? I also orchestrated, because most of the renewals are going to be in the beginner class, I also orchestrate that I always have one of our black belts that are graduating, maybe 2 or 3 at those classes. I'm highlighting them. I'm showing them off. I am making sure that I have, if it's a little kid, I have a parent there who's saying, oh, Joey was, he was asthmatic on the inhaler 3 times a day and ADD, taking 3 pills and afraid to walk into his first grade class. And now look at him, right? So I was always having parents doing before and after conversations. And I'm letting, the 7-year-old or the 12-year-old or whatever perform and spotlighting them and making a big deal of it. Everybody getting the picture so far? So overwhelming proof, and you got to start with what you have and then keep building and building and building, right? And then the next part of the premise is January 1, which really we're going to implement on December 12th, is a significant tuition increase. Now, most of you need to do a significant tuition increase anyway, so it gives you good timing and excuse to do it. But typically, we would be in the range of it's going to be a 20% increase, which would come out to be more or less $5,000. Okay, I like that number, $5,000, because it's a lot of money for somebody to walk away from by saying I want to wait for 3 months, right? So beginning for 2021, we're doing a significant tuition increase. If you go ahead and renew your program into our black belt or into our leadership program, we'll grandfather you in at this year's rates. And then you'll never have to deal with that all the way through second degree black belt. So you'll be locked in at our current tuition level, okay? So now that creates an extremely powerful incentive. And let me point out, by the way, that frankly, we always have that incentive, right? Because we're going to have that tuition price sheet, just like we have posted up in the Facebook group, that has a price level at white belt, a price level at gold belt, and then a cutoff where it goes to like the normal rates. Or you can even have another price level at orange, and then it cuts up. But we're always comparing the tuition to the normal tuition versus the white belt scholarship, the normal tuition versus the gold belt scholarship, whatever it might be, right? But now on the renewal blitz, you have the additional logic of all of those tuition rates are going to jump up dramatically in January. However, you don't need to worry about that, because as long as we've renewed your tuition into leadership, or we've renewed you into our black belt program, you're grandfathered in, to this year's tuition rate, and you're locked into that to your black belt, or you're locked into that to your second degree, so you don't have to worry about it. Is that making sense so far for everyone? And so what we're looking at here, and now I'm going to do some math with everybody. So, take out a blank piece of paper. I saw Amanda Olson on here somewhere. Amanda, this is the math we did with your numbers back in Estes Park. It's amazing. I can't remember where I put my keys, but I can remember what we did in Estes Park. I'm not sure that's a sign of age or it's just random. But here's what you want to do. Take out a blank piece of paper. And if you don't know the exact numbers, just guesstimate for yourself. One is how many students you have that are on your basic program that are not renewed to black belt or into leadership. And then the second number is how many students that you have that are renewed on your lower level renewal, I'm going to say black belt, that aren't in leadership, right? And then what we're going to do with those numbers is we're going to do the brain dead stupid moron goal, and then we're going to do the actual target, okay? And by the way, this is the kind of language I used with our staff. We'd all get our sheets out, we'd all get our stats out, and I go, here's the brain dead moron, I can put an ATM on the wall and hit this number. Or here's our, really what we're targeting. So the first number is take everybody who's on basic but is not renewed at all, and we're going to, worst case, moron goal, renew 50% of them. And our target is 75% of them. Okay. So then what you want to do, and everybody's number is going to be different, but take that number and I'll make it easy for me. If it's 100 people, we're going to target 75 or more, and our worst case scenario is 50. So far, so good. And then on everyone who's on black belt, who's not in leadership, same numbers. Our worst case is 50%, and our target is 75% or more, right? And really, people who do this well, gee, Bob, that Chinese looks appetizing. But really, anyone who does this well, you can get 80, 85%, sometimes even 90% renewed, right? But as far as goal setting, we're going to set that as our target is not the high goal, but our target is 75%. And our worst case, we're going to be pissed off, but worst case scenario is 50%, right? So then what you have to do is you have to compute those numbers. So, how many is the 75? How many is the 50? How many is the 50? How many is the 75 on the other group, right? Now, once we have that number, our low goal is 10%, our high goal is 20% of those paid in full, okay? So if the number was 100 and the 75% is 75, that means 15 paid in fulls, or it means 7 or 8, let's say 8 paid in fulls, right? So now take your number of what your paid in full is and multiply that out by the 5, by the 10% and the 20%. Okay, so now you have how much cash that we realistically can generate from the basic students from paid in fulls. And then let's take 90% and 80% of the number, and we've got to multiply that by what the average down payment's going to be. That gives us how much cash from down payments. Now, if you're asking for leadership 950 and you're asking for black belt 600, we all know that not everybody's going to pay 950. Not everybody's going to pay 500. Some of them are going to pay 300 and they're going to pay the other 300 next month. So, average them out for what the guesstimate is, the real number is going to be. So if it's 800 and it's 750 or, whatever, I might guess that on average, I'm going to get 600 of the 800. And on average of the 400 or the 500, I'm going to get 350. So now I multiply that out. Do the same thing, obviously, for everyone who's in black belt, renewing the leadership. And Amanda, I'm doing this quickly, aren't I? Because we spent almost an hour on this in Estes Park. But you do the same thing for the leadership people. Now, top of my head, let's walk through. Let me say that I have 50 basic renewal prospects. And I get 40 of them renewed. And I get 10 of them to pay in full. And my paid in full for a single is $15,000. Well, now I have $150,000 from paid in fulls. And I have another 30 renewals that do, let's say, 500. So I've got 15,000 from initial tuition, down payments. And let's say that on average they're paying $250 now, and their payment goes to $497. So on average, I'm bumping the monthly tuition by $250. So I've got $250 times 40. Everybody following me? That's a 10,000 bump in the billing. Notice I only did the net increase. And I have 40 at 500, so I've got 20,000 there. And I've got 10 at 15,000, I have 150 there. So I have 190,000 cash and a $10,000 bump in the billing. Everybody follow those numbers? Now, some of you aren't following the numbers because you're like, holy shit, he's talking like he's from Mars. But these are real numbers, right? Is you really can do, these numbers. My schools have done it over and over and over. Master Smith schools have done it over and over and over. Our member schools have done it over and over and over. One of the stories we use a lot is Colby, but lots of people have done this. So this is completely doable, right? Then you run the same numbers on your people who are in black belt that are renewable to leadership, right? Going to be a lower dollar amount for the renewal because they're already in black belt, but you run the same numbers and you figure out what's the bump in the monthly going to be, how much is the cash going to be. Now, as far as staffing, and this certainly applies to all of you who have a big staff. So, again, I'll pick on Amanda. Amanda's got a pretty good crew there, including some family members. If you have a big staff, I always based cash bonuses on cash deposited in the bank. And I based time off bonuses on head count on renewals or projected billing increase, or a combination of the two, right? I learned a long time ago never to give people cash for promises, because now what I ended up with is a bunch of agreements that had 0 down, 7 years of payments, So, contract amount is a number that can be fudged a lot. How much money hit the bank is, real numbers. Now you got to monitor it to make sure you don't have some idiot give them a 90% discount for paying in full or something like that. But other than that, that's a number that's difficult to fudge. Everybody follow me so far? So let's walk our way back to where we're at so far. October becomes a massive exciting, electric, special events, turn the music up on the floor, do special things for the people who are virtual, gifting, go to, what is it, Oriental Trading, get a bunch of kooky Halloween stuff and mail them as grabbers with the stuff, all of that kind of stuff. So you really put all of your staff on notice that nobody can be slipping through the cracks. Everybody has to be an A student. They've got to be delighted. We've got to be touching base, making eye contact with a 6-foot pole, touching them on the shoulder, all of that stuff, right? So making sure that we're really, really, really cranking up and getting everybody excited for the month, right? And where some people get squeamish is they get squeamish on like the outrageous decor or mailing to them, 3 times a week. Well, here's the reality. Take any example you want. The example I always use for the staff was, okay, we have an intramural tournament on Saturday, and you've been talking about it, and you've been prepping, you've been registering people, and you've told them the school obviously will be closed, and we're going to be at XYZ high school. How many people still show up and pull on the door, and they're annoyed that there wasn't class that day? Well, that's why I mail to them 32 times. That's why I hand them something every time they walk in. That's why they have to duck under the signs to get into the school, okay? And I've got to tell you, every time I've personally worked in one of our schools doing this, the last day, there are still people going, well, what's going on? Why do I want to do this? And there's still people saying, well, can I give you an answer in March? Well, why March? Well, I get a big end of year bonus and I don't get paid till March. And so I'd love to, give you the money in March, and rather than doing it today. Oh, sure. That's fine. You can give us the money in March. That's fine. In fact, let me suggest something. Why don't you just put it on your credit card and pay the credit card off with Christmas bonus? Well, I don't want to pay 18% interest. How about if we cover the interest? Oh, you would do that? Sure. No problem. Well, if you don't know the numbers, 18% interest is 1.5% a month. They get 30 days free float. If it's 3 months, you're paying 3%. And now you're not chasing them down in March trying to get the money, right? So, yeah, happy to do that. But you really have to make a big deal about deadline 1 and a big deal about deadline 2 and a huge deal. And you've done it right when people are sliding an envelope with a check underneath the door on Saturday night at midnight. Your program director's going by a couple of Christmas parties to get the agreement signed or to pick up the check. You're talking to the family from Europe and getting a credit card over the phone with the promise of finalizing the paperwork when they get back in town. That's when you've done it right, is everybody is freaked out to make it into the deadline, okay? If they're not, then you're not making a big deal of it, right? And again, weak staff will say, oh, yeah, you can do that January 15th when you get back in town. No. December 12th. And the reason I say December 12th is then it gives me another week to pull in everybody who didn't get done. And by the way, the language, which we'll go over again, but the language at that point is, I want to apologize. Obviously, I got so busy because so many students are trying to get this finalized that I didn't get a chance to get your renewal finalized. So I apologize that we didn't get that done. I'll go ahead and give you the the discount that or the grandfather tuition, since it was my fault, not your fault, this week. But that gives you a chance to clean up all that stuff, right? Master Smith would probably make his staff all work all week on that week. And so what he'd be doing is he'd be doing the cleanup between Christmas and New Year's. I was always letting them. In fact, oftentimes organizationally it got difficult because a few times I tried to give out cruises or one thing or another, but to buy something that you're going to put them on a plane and send them off somewhere after Christmas. One, you've got friends and family issues, and two is, just there's not time to do that. So I tried a couple times of, if you do this, you get to go on the Caribbean cruise for the holidays. And if not, you're sitting in the school. And by the way, with multiple schools, we always had the guys that didn't even hit the moron goals, right? Or who didn't hit the goal to be off for 10 days. And everybody made fun of them. We laughed about the fact that, Scotty and Tommy were sitting in there, having to work the day after Christmas. Everybody else was out on a cruise or skiing or whatever. I bet you morons won't do that next year, right? So having that kind of conversation with people. And by the way, if you don't have staff who can rise to that occasion and deal with that kind of hazing, you need different staff. It really is one of those. And I'm not talking about the part-timers. I'm not talking about 15-year-old, black belt, but the full-timers. I mean, they got to rise to the occasion or not. So it's real important to be on top of all those things. Okay, let's stop there. Pause. Ask questions. Questions on this so far?
Sure, I just want to make sure I understood. You said, so like in October, this month, it's the events and decoration. Just make sure everybody's getting to A. It's exciting. Not sending anything yet, right? That's
and renewing the people you would renew anyway.
Right, the regular process that we work on today.
Right.
But then we start sending out the stuff about the price increase, plus all the proof stuff and all that. That's all happening in November.
Yeah, starting November, and really hammering it hard, especially up to Thanksgiving.
Sure.
And of course, really hammering it hard the entire time. But I mean, starting right then. Here's, I think, psychology 101, and I don't know if there's any studies that support this, but no matter what it was, we're doing a national, a national tournament with top international competitors. We're bringing in the world champion, whatever it is. I've never been able to get my guys to maintain enthusiasm and promote something for more than 6 or 7 weeks. Right about that time, it starts to become old news, right? So I've always looked at maybe 2 months, preferably maybe about 6 weeks, that we're hitting it hard and building excitement. And before that, I mean, if I started in October 1st, but the deadline isn't until December 20th or December 12th, that's still a long way away. And then you have to get them excited, and then get them excited again, then get them excited again, oftentimes before you get them engaged. Now, the way you make Thanksgiving a big deal, and this is for now students, not staff. The way you make a big deal for staff is there's cash bonus, there's time off bonuses, they get Thursday through the weekend off. They don't have to work Friday, Saturday on that weekend, but you can give the staff a head count goal, a contract or monthly billing increase, and a cash goal. So if they're if they're on track for their high goal, by Wednesday before Thanksgiving, they get an extra $500 bonus, or they get an extra whatever bonus that might be, right? But the way you get it for the students is, one of the things we would do is, the leadership was the blue top. And so we would do, hang the blue tops up, hang like 20 of them up, put on the mirrors, first 25 get, $100 value, leadership top for free. And then we would mark out the 25, mark out 24, mark out 23, mark out 22, mark out 21, and then just keep marking them off. But it was basically anybody who renews before Thanksgiving, until we run out anyway, gets their free leadership, leadership top thrown in for free. It's $100 value. The other thing we would do is do some special leadership only seminar, maybe the week right after Thanksgiving. And so obviously you need to get renewed by, the week before Thanksgiving, because the week after Thanksgiving, we have our first big leadership only seminar of the month. And you want to make sure you're coming to hear, coming to see, coming to do whatever it might be, right? In a multi-school environment, I never really taught the students under black belt. But then there would be a very special leadership seminar with Master Oliver, and I would come into all the schools. And of course, my seminar was about why you should renew. wasn't phrased that way, but I'd come in and do a big goal setting, how to set goals, how to achieve goals, why it's so important to have short-term, intermediate, long-term goals, why it's important to have a BHAG, some big, hairy, audacious goal. And for most of you right now, black belt is that. For once you progress another few months or so, for second, third degree really becomes that big goal. For the advanced belts, it's nothing's worse than having a goal and achieving it. You've always got to have a goal beyond that goal. You've got to have, if you're focused on getting to first degree black belt, it's depressing when you get there if you don't have a goal to get to second degree and third degree black belt. And there's all kinds of great quotes you can find. One is, Nobel laureate, somebody asked him, what do you do next? And his answer was change fields, of course. You can use stories of the Apollo astronauts of the biggest highlight of their life, of course, was walking on the moon. And a lot of them were depressed and, one thing or another afterwards, because, what do you do? What's your follow-up gig, right? So you can create all of those stories about why at this point that you're at, it's really not that big a deal to be a black belt, because you've got to have a goal to second degree, third degree beyond that, or else that's going to be a letdown, truth be told, right? Same thing of financial goals, right? I mean, people want the goal to buy the Porsche or whatever. Well, if they don't have something beyond that, it's like, well, okay, goes a little faster, looks cool, but so what? So you've got to have that next higher goal. So part of what we would do is, special leadership seminars. You get the free top. You can come up with something else maybe that they get for doing it early. But the main thing would be, and this is for you and the staff, is if you have A+ students, you have A students, you have B students, you have C students, is in order to hit 75, 80%, you've got to move those C's to B's and then B's to A's in order to hit those big numbers, right? And so where you've got to motivate or focus yourself is skimming all the cream early. The first week you get all the A+, the second week and the third week you get all the A's. And then after Thanksgiving, because in October, November, you've been really getting their motivation up. And then you have in December, you can pull off all of the other ones that are more difficult. Now, the dynamic of this is that a lot of times you or your staff will talk to somebody who says no. And you've got to be really careful that you're not taking no for an answer easily. The conversation I always had with staff is, well, the way this goes is somebody says, tell me about this. How's it? What's it all about? No, we don't think we're going to do this. So you get no, 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 no. Maybe explain it to me again. Let me think about it. Yes. And an awful lot of those are closing on December 12th. And by the way, they all had to work like 15-hour days on, they weren't coming in for 4 hours on Saturday morning on that last weekend. All of the staff were working all day Saturday, working all day Sunday. They were driving to people's houses to pick up the check. They were, calling the family who's already left for Europe for the holidays and getting the credit card over the phone, all of that kind of stuff, right? Showing up at the Christmas party. Hi, this is our martial arts teacher. Give me a second to give him my credit card. So all of that kind of stuff. But again, think about the numbers. Is the example I started with is you only have 50 to work with. Well, that's still 190,000 cash potentially. Split over 2 months. You do normal renewals and so forth anyway, but arguably it's an extra 65, 70,000 above and beyond what you would have done normally each month for those 2 months, right? Plus $10,000 bump in the billing, right? And one of the things that we hear periodically, which is kind of dumbassery to tell you the truth, is people saying, well, I didn't want to really, have any of them do paid in fulls because I want to build the billing. Well, yeah, I want to build the billing. And for me personally, I don't really care about enrollments paid in full. I want renewals paid in full. And if the renewal's paid in full and somebody's paying in full for 4, 5, 6 years, I'm tickled to death. Again, assuming I'm not giving them so much of a discount that it's a problem. But I'm not doing paid in full renewals because I want to bill the billing. Because again, think in terms of I add $250 to the monthly payment versus they give me $15,000 today. Well, how long does it take to make that up? Right? Now I understand I'm losing what they were paying too. But the way that I came up with our pricing structure to begin with, and this may sound ass backwards, but it was if half of them paid in full, how can I make sure the billing still goes up? Right? So I never wanted to lose the billing. So obviously, if the payment doubles and half of them pay in full, I'm still at the same billing level I was, right? If a third of them pay in full and the payment goes up 50%, I'm still at the same billing level I was before. I haven't taken anything off of that pile, right? So again, if you look at now, it also means they're paying $247 a month. I don't want my staff writing, it's 982 months at the same tuition they're paying now. And I'm just so excited that they're committed for a long time. That doesn't do any of us any good. We all know the retention is not about the contract, right? The retention is about the goal setting. So, but let me cycle back to something Master Smith said when I tuned in, is I have done these stats year after year after year. And here's what I found. Once somebody was in leadership program, the average dropout rate would drop from 5 or 6% a month down to 0.5% or lower. Okay. Now think about that, a 10-fold drop in the likelihood of them dropping out because I went through this massive effort with them to set goals and then have the ability to hold them to those goals. Okay. Those are real numbers. Okay. Now, part of it admittedly is new students in the first 6 months are more likely not, this just isn't their thing yet. But most of it is about, and it's why I don't like, I enroll you for a year and then it just automatically renews itself every month. Well, that's not the same. That's then I just kind of convert them to, a year at a time, or I convert them to a month at a time, and I haven't gone through this. This is a lot of labor, but the labor is worth it because you get inside their mind. You get them putting the black belt up on the wall, the picture of them with a black belt up on the wall. You get them walking through the goal sheet and framing it and focusing on it, all of those things in order to really get them engaged. Matt Smith, anything I'm missing so far?
The only thing I would remind everybody that when you do 50 renewals, that's $1 million worth of business that you did in 1 month. Now, Master Oliver doesn't like contract amount to weigh too much on contract, but what I always did is that I knew that if I wrote it, I was going to collect it, because we looked at that number too on an annual basis for that year. How much contract did we write and how much did we collect? So you kind of see what your percentage of your collections are. And the better your retention is, of course, the better that's going to be. But just remember, doing 50 contracts is $1 million. Scott Sullivan did that last Christmas. He did $965,000 worth of renewals in 1 month. Well, that means you've got all that money coming in over the next 4, 5, or 6 years, whatever the length of your program was. So that means that your gross is on the way up. If your cash is higher than your contract amount, that means your cash is going to be on the way down. So I always used my contract amount as to know what is the maximum that I could get to, because the average of my contract amount over the year is the highest. I can't collect more than I write. So if whatever my contract amount is at the end of the year, then my cash is going to be aiming towards that if I keep that good retention like Master Oliver said. So when you renew them, don't throw them over the fence. Still do monthly things like I was talking about in our call before. Do those monthly activities, keep these people engaged, keep them motivated, keep them coming to class so they're progressing, and you've got to be their motivator. You've got to help keep them motivated.
Let me say what you said in a different way. Again, the way I prefer to look at it is take that new monthly payment number. My, back of the envelope rule of thumb number was whatever that number was multiplied by 10, and that's what my billing's going to end up being. That accounts for dropouts, it accounts for all that other stuff. But if I want my billing to be 80,000 a month, then I always wanted to be writing 8,000 a month and billing to be there. Now, the better your retention is, the lower the number you had to do every month had to be, right? So, it is going to adjust itself down and up based upon, your retention. But that was always the rule of thumb I kind of used for our staff is, if we want the billing to be 50, that means every month we got to be writing 5,000 in new monthly payment. And a lot of them get, fixated on, well, we did X amount of contracts. Like, well, okay, well, that's great. But how much did we really add to the billing? How much are we losing from the billing? How much are people who are paying that are inactive, right? What are we actually collecting? So really, we need to every month write this amount. So again, just from renewals, as Master Smith is saying, from my worldview, I'm tickled to death about adding 10,000 to the billing, 15,000 to the billing. The total face value of it is, if it's built out, if that's based on it's 6 or 7 years, that puts it in a little bit of perspective because a lot of those are longer renewals. But I know that in January or February, we're going to have this much more revenue coming in every month. And by the way, we deposited X amount in the bank. So, in a weird year like this, some of you have some debt that's accumulated. So you make November, December, we zero out all the debt that's accumulated. Some of you need to pour more money into marketing. Well, for me, I was always doing a huge marketing budget in January. And my November, December blitz, if we had any debt accumulated for the year, it zeroed it out. But it was money I could put into a huge marketing blitz, newspaper, TV, one thing or another in January. So it paid for that. It also ended up, starting to build the contingent liability or the wealth fund. So, a portion of it would be going away where we never see it again. A portion of it would be zeroing out debt, and a portion of it would be, jump starting the new year. This making sense so far? So now let's talk about some of the little procedural things. And I'll go through all of this stuff really quickly. But one of the goal setting things that we would do with all the students is I would buy the cheapest possible black belt. And then what we would do is November 1st, every student who walked through the door, and I mean white belts up to brown belts, every student who walked in the door, we'd put them in a black belt. And when we did that, we would do two things. We would take a picture of them with their black belt on, and we'd take one of those silver Sharpies, and on their belt, we would write out their target black belt testing day, right? So they've got the goal setting day. They would have a picture with them with their black belt. And I saw recently they have a new version of Polaroids. I just loved Polaroids because I could take the Polaroid picture. I could take two of them. I would, in Sharpie, I would write down their target testing date, give them a picture. I would keep a picture. And then we would have a big poster of, the graduating class of 2024, the graduating class of 2023, like high schools do, the class of 2024, 2023, right? So I could have all of their pictures up there in their uniform, in their black belt. And then every bit of language we used in class was all tied into, okay, you're wearing a black belt. You got to do the kick like a black belt. You've got to do, visualize. And everybody close your eyes, visualize yourself, not as a gold belt, but as a white belt, or not as a white belt, as a black belt. And you're going to do this exactly perfectly. Picture how Tommy just did this. Okay, you're going to do it just like Tommy. And then you get the idea, right? So putting them in the black belt, taking a picture in the black belt. We would do the goal setting sheet, the one I stole from Zig Ziglar years ago. That's up on the site as well. So we would walk them through SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tangible. We would have them set the goal to first degree, second degree black belt. We would have the target date. We would explain to them the black belts we're given. Obviously, you just didn't get promoted to black belt. This is for goal setting. We're going to spend all month visualizing yourself as a black belt, because visualization is a very powerful tool. And then when we go back to your regular belt, what you're going to do is you're going to put it on your wall in your bedroom or in your bathroom with a picture of you as a black belt, so you can visualize that every day and use that along with a goal setting sheet, which I'd recommend you frame, and put that up there. So that's one thing. Another thing we would do is, you guys may have all seen, doing the big goals posters. So we would have them do the big goals posters. And it would really be like each week there's something new. So 1 week everybody gets a black belt, gets a picture, and we tie it all. And of course, the theme for October and then November is different iterations of goal setting. So we could do, everybody gets a black belt the first week. Second week, everybody does their goals posters. So they do their goals posters and they clip out pictures, and they, clip out a picture and put their head on it, and, when their target is for black belt, but also what their other goals are in school, at work, career, etc. So they do all these things, right? So now with the pictures, the graduating class, and big deal about that, then there would be the goals posters, and everybody bring their goals posters down, and they'd show them to the other people in class and so forth. And so you could do that. Obviously, sharing the essay, sharing all of that stuff with everybody every time. And every class orchestrating where you're spotlighting a black belt, having the parents talk about what that person has achieved, and pulling all that stuff together. On that note, we have about a minute and a half, so I'll open it up for questions, and then we'll call it a day. While I have my lunch delivery person taking random cash off my desk. Questions? No, everybody's good?
So what was the percentage you're shooting for paid in fulls? You said
20%. Kind of worst case 10, best case 20.
Thank you.
And again, Master Smith will talk about next time, but we'll talk about a variety of times. I'm not push. What my urgency is that I get everyone renewed, and I get everybody renewed solid, right? And the cash will almost always be an oh by the way close. Might be oh by the way as I'm at, after they've signed the agreement, I've given them the contract. Maybe oh by the way the next day or two. But it's after the main deal is done. It's not in the process, right? Now, I'll freely admit, I can, he can, we could go after the paid in full to begin with and back down into a monthly deal. But for staff and so forth, oftentimes they would go after the cash deal and blow the person out of the water and not have the ability to pull them back in. So what I want is every possible renewal closed, and then I'm going to go back in and do the cash deal. And a big part of getting the cash deal is having the presentation on how they can go about doing it, short of just having the cash in hand.
And MJ, I would tell you, make sure that when you do the close on your renewals, don't talk about the paid in fulls then. Just like Master Oliver said, it's got to be, you go back to them before the end of the year and you say, oh, by the way, when we did your black belt program, did I go through the different payment options that could save you up to $5,000 and you could still make monthly payments? So you
And
kind of
that's with, I distinctly remember saying that you would walk them through that the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I didn't see it anywhere in our thing, and I didn't want him to start talking to people about it.
Yeah. On that note, we'll call it a day, guys. Okay.